Welcome to another episode of At Random Podcast. I'm your host Alex, and with me today is Batman. How you doing, Ali?
I'm holding on.
You are. And Andy over in Belgium. How you doing, sir?
I am doing so good. I'm still debating if I should do the thing I sent you. You remember the thing? Okay, for the
No,
people
I don't.
listening, look, Alex doesn't remember, but for the people listening, we said it in the past. We have a chat where we talk to each other and stuff like that. I may have possibly wrote the worst joke of all time during a time like this. But
Oh, yeah.
but but at the same time, it was the funniest fucking joke ever. It's like you ever heard Jimmy Carr's worst joke ever? Like his rudest joke ever?
All of them.
No, it's like we should invest more in mosquito nets to save millions of mosquitoes dying every year needlessly of AIDS. So that was
Jesus
Jimmy
Christ.
Carr. It's the equivalent of that.
Okay.
Only it's oh god.
All right.
You know
you
you
know
have
what?
to look at.
It's going to be a heavy episode, so you might as well go for it anyway. Let's just go all
I
in
was
on this
I was
one.
going to anyway. Like this is just, I cannot write such good material and not say it. So here we go. You know, you have to look at positive things in life. Like with the coronavirus. One positive thing is now at least I can do my Chinese impression and a lot less people are mad.
The look on Ali's face is... Oh,
And
my God.
I'm sorry. Look, I know it's very poor timing, but it's satire. It's fucking funny to me. I don't know how I came. I know I was talking to you, Alex. So I know it was in a shitstorm of mean shit to say to each other,
Probably, yeah.
and that came up, and oh man, that is the worst joke I could possibly make. But hey, I'm glad it's out. It's off my chest now.
That's good. And the way to look at it, as I see it anyway, is like right now, for context, for if this is, you're listening to this in a few years or whatever, we are like in quarantine lockdown because of the
Yeah.
coronavirus. I mean, if you can't have a laugh in these times, then I mean, you're gonna like commit suicide. So you might as well just make a joke out of it and try to make the best of it.
Oh, probably, yeah.
These are dark times.
Oh wow,
we
wow,
live in.
wow. So we just for a podcast that's meant to do good in the world, we just destroyed people dying from coronaviruses and suicide people. So yeah, good for us. We'll get there in the end.
And now we're gonna talk about mass murderers and cannibals.
Oh
So,
God, are you kidding me?
No,
Is
not
that what
kidding
this
you.
episode is about?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just in for a penny, in for a pound, I guess. Let's go.
Exactly. This would always just be known as like the black episode, just like the black mark.
Yeah.
If people want something dark, they'll just come back to this one.
It's the episode we'll have to delete, and in a couple of years, people will sell.
Yeah, it'd be like that one, like the one fan from the beginning downloaded and just never
Yeah.
deleted and found it and like bootlegged it,
Put it on
like,
DVD.
Pirate Bay
Yeah.
or whatever, like selling cassette tapes of it. All right, so as I just said, we're talking about a bit of like there's torture, there's going to be mass murder, bit of cannibalism, police investigations, all of that stuff in this episode.
Okay.
So this
That's so funny thing because Andy loves this.
Oh
You
yeah.
try to guess
oh
one?
God, yeah. Murder, mayhem, fucking like even cannibalism. I know like Andre Chikatilo was
No, but
one of my all-time
like if you can
favorites.
think of a murder, cannibalism, torture case, which ones are the
Mhm.
ones that pop in your head?
Oh, Andre Chikatilo and Albert Fish. Two of the
Mhm.
most fucking horrible thing. Like Albert Fish even kidnapped a girl once and sent a letter to the parents about what he did with her. It's fucking
Jesus.
sick. Yeah. I can't
Okay.
imagine as a
Okay.
parent getting a letter like that. It's
These
fucking
guys-
horrible.
didn't quite do that, but they did many horrible things.
And Andre Chikatilo used to bite nipples off of people just for the fuck of it.
I mean, they're like human candy, right?
Yeah,
They're like
I think
soft and a
so.
bit chewy, like little wine
I
gums or something.
smacked a guy once with a baseball bat. No candy fell out though, so they're not pinatas.
Damn it.
Jesus.
Okay.
We are going places today. We are going places today.
Yeah, we are definitely going places.
All right. Let's bring it on track. So today we're talking about something that's from my hometown back in old Adelaide, South Australia, which happened sort of throughout the 90s. They're called the Snowtown Murders, or the bodies in barrels murders.
Okay, wait, something rings familiar about this.
We might have spoken about it before, but
Okay.
So to give some background, so these crimes were committed between August of 1992 and May of 1999. There were 12 victims killed in total. The murders were committed by John Bunting, Robert Wagner, and James Vlasakis, with a fourth person also convicted of helping dispose of the bodies, but not of murder, called Mark
Was there
Haydon.
a doctor involved?
No doctor.
Okay.
These are, we'll get to it. So, in summary, this was one of the longest trials in Australian court history. It was the longest in the state of South Australia's court history, and also the most expensive prosecution of all time.
In Australia.
In South Australia, it was the most expensive and the longest, and it's one of Australia's, as a whole country, one of the most expensive and longest running court cases.
Okay.
So, most of the 12 victims were found on, I believe it was the 20th. Oh my god, Andy's such a child. Showing me a guy with a huge dick on his phone.
I did.
through
No,
the
go
webcam.
Continue. Don't let anything disturb you.
All right. Oh, okay. So most of the bodies that were found were actually found disposed of and jammed inside 44-gallon drums, 6 44-gallon drums, in a disused bank vault in a small town called Snowtown, which is about 140 kilometers north of my hometown, Adelaide, or 87 miles.
In a bank vault?
Disused. It used to be a bank, and then the bank moved out of town, and these guys rented it, and then used the vault to store 6 containers with bodies shoved inside them. And these barrels, they had moved from place to place as the police were like potentially starting to catch on.
You know, not smart, but fucking original.
It's sort of smart. We'll get into it a bit. Like, well, obviously they got caught, so it wasn't. But like, it was a good setup for what they were doing, basically.
Okay.
So, but out of these victims, so they were found in the town of Snowtown, but only one of the victims was actually killed there. The other 11 were killed in or around the city of Adelaide. Neither the 3 perpetrators or the 11 victims were from Snowtown either. Basically, they put the bodies there because they figured the police wouldn't bother. Like, you know, it's a small town with, I don't know, maybe like 1,000, couple thousand people. You know, no one's going to bother
Easy
looking
victims.
into it here. Yeah, well, and no one's going to bother looking into it here. Whereas if you're in like the big city, you know, you got the police everywhere. And so I think they thought if they took it away from the city that things would be a bit easier for them.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy, John Bunting, was sort of the leader of the killers, like sort of seen as the ringleader.
Yeah, okay.
And he basically convinced the other 2, James Vlasakis and Robert Wagner, that helped him murder, that the victims were like pedophiles, homosexual, like gay homosexual men, or just like weak people.
Okay.
So he tried to sort of get in their head. Like, these were already kind of disturbed guys, and he tried to get in their head that this guy's a pedophile. We need to kill him. And
well, that happens a lot with serial killers and with murderers in particular. They dehumanize their victims just so it's easier for them to kill. Like Ted Bundy.
Well, they need to psychologically to do that. Otherwise,
Well,
the
not
psyche wouldn't
everybody,
cope with
though.
it.
Not
but
everybody
most
though.
of
Like
them.
there's Richard Ramirez who just loved seeing fear in people while he raped them and shit like that before he killed them. But Ted Bundy played with his victims. So one of the things what he did was playing with his victims. That is definitely a form of dehumanizing somebody to the point where they're an object to you. And once I think it always went like this. Like once they become that object, then they're fucked. Then they're just fucked.
And that's what these guys sort of did.
Okay,
Like, as
so
things
this
progressed.
Bunting guy presented these victims as basically as objects, as something less than human.
Yeah, he viewed them as like trash. They were
Okay.
just cleaning out the trash of the neighborhood, and that's the other thing. Most of them were like local to where these guys lived.
Were these people like poor or like
Yes. Yeah, they were at the time. We'll get to that bit, but they were living in the northern suburbs in Adelaide, which is like the poor, the less affluent area where there's a lot of like
Okay.
addiction issues and
I think it's
poverty
very
and things like
notable
that.
to say that that people like that, prostitutes and shit like that, for the people that don't know and are not into true crime, people like that dying are basically known as the lesser dead. So when you hear that phrase come up, the lesser dead, then that usually means victims that are either drug abusers or prostitutes, people that don't have the best of luck in their life. Let's just say that.
Yeah, and that was fair to say that's most of the victims here for sure.
Okay, yeah.
Which I'll go through almost like out of the 12 victims, there's like a bit on each of them, like how they died, why, when they died.
Okay.
But yeah, so sort of the way they did their murders was they generally started with like taunting. So Bunting had another friend called, what was his name? Barry Lane. And he was an openly homosexual cross-dresser, which is quite funny given that they ended up killing like these types of people.
Yeah.
This guy, Bunting, he moved from a small country town to the south of Adelaide to the city in 1991. And then he met this Barry Lane guy who basically sort of Bunting used him as information on like rumors on pedophiles in the area or like child abusers and homosexuals and things like that. And then what he did is he actually created like a spider wall, with like thread and pictures and phone numbers of.
Oh, I wanted that. Like, still to this day, I want that so much.
Yep. He was like a full-on like conspiracy theorist type of thing. So he had in a wall in his room like photographs of these alleged, deviants or whatever, their phone numbers. And apparently he would just randomly play a game where he would just randomly pick one and then like ring them up and basically be like, I'm coming for you, like you're filth, like you're going to get what's coming to you, and just hang up the phone.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then he actually eventually sort of used this Lane guy and a couple of his, this Robert Wagner guy, because they all lived in the same neighborhood. So they would actually invite the victims over and basically like just murder them. Like they would invite them to the house under like social gathering pretenses usually, and like they strangled a guy to death. One of the victims, Ray Davies, was an intellectually disabled man who lived in a caravan behind one of the neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what they were also doing was these three, the three murderers, they were, from their victims, they were then saying that like they stole their social security and bank details. So they were like claiming pensions for people and disability, like social security stuff, even after they'd killed the victim. So that was like, but that wasn't seen as the main motivating factor for killing them. That was just like an extra bonus for them. So like this guy, Ray Davies, who was an intellectually disabled man, basically they just killed him because he was like an easy target.
Fuck.
Like, at this point, they had killed a few guys and they're like, well, fuck it, let's just get rid of this guy.
Yeah.
Jesus
like they were
Christ.
evil people.
You think they would like? You should like he's using up our social security of the healthy people. So fuck that guy. You think that might have been the logic, like the logic that a lot of people use to shed hate on people who are less fortunate?
Definitely, and especially in that sort of neighborhood, like a lot of people are on social welfare and very poor, and like, they were living in government housing, for example. All of these guys and stuff. So they were like, they themselves weren't that well to do. So it was like, a bit of extra money. We got rid of the trash, So for them, they thought they were doing nothing wrong.
I don't know if you have it, but how did Bunting live? Like, was he part of that, or was he mediocre? Was he more wealthy? Was he more well-to-do? Like,
no, he was part of it also.
No, he was also in like the house. We call it housing trust, so that's like the government run housing. So he was also.
So basically, he's in the same ship as them, and he's just picking them off.
Yep, and he's described as well as like a master manipulator of people. Like, so he had this,
God,
and that's why it was so easy to convince the other two guys to help him like murder people.
You have to be a master manipulator to be able to do that, though. Convince another person to kill and do the horrendous things that they did. Because, God.
As you could imagine, so the notoriety of these like crimes initially actually led to like an uptake in the economy in that town. Because obviously, you know, the 18 months after they got arrested, like people were like, oh my God, like they went there to like take pictures of this is where they found the bodies. Because this was a huge thing. Like I think 7 or 8, like growing up when this happened. So I don't remember like in my memory most of the information, but it was huge. You know, people were going there just to see the town where, you know, these 6 like barrels full of corpses were found. And
we drove through there once.
Did we drive through there once?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Remember? You and I, we did.
I always freak her out like, we're going to go through Snowtown. I'm going to put you in a barrel.
Did you pull out your Glock? Shot a guy in a wheelchair? You know, if you ever do that, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever shoot a guy in a wheelchair, shoot him in the legs. He won't give a fuck.
Oh my God.
That is at random podcast advice right there. And I'm standing behind that sentence. If you shoot a guy in a wheelchair, shoot him in the legs.
There is something really wrong with you, right?
Yeah.
Look at that face. The doctors knew that the second he was born.
You know, I went to the doctors last week. He told me to stop masturbating. I asked him why. He says, well, I'm trying to do the investigation. I'm sorry. That's a dumb joke.
God. And on that note, let's get back to it, shall we? So anyway, so after all the notoriety, of course, now no one really wants to live there. So they've actually considered like changing the name of the town because like it's basically always going to be synonymous with this murder. Like no one knows. It's such a small town. Like they don't do anything else. They're just like farmers and shit.
It does happen occasion that like Truth and Consequences is one of those names that like Americans will know pretty well for not. It originally had a very fun name, but it ended up being the most horrific fucking history behind it and shit like that.
Yeah, it's these guys, you know, people just giving towns good names and shit, you know. I mean,
yeah,
just how it is. So let's do like a bit of a rundown of sort of what happened. So this guy, John Justin Bunting, he was born 4th of September 1966 in Inala, Queensland, in Australia.
Okay.
He was driven to murder by his hatred for pedophiles and homosexuals, like we've said, and has been described as a skilled manipulator of people and also often referred to as Australia's worst serial killer.
Okay.
He was basically a ringleader of like a degenerate like subculture, like vigilante group in his sort of mind.
So ringleader of Australia, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. He's basically our prime minister. So he moved to Adelaide in November 1991, where he met Robert Wagner, and they were neighbors living in the same neighborhood. Ultimately, what ended up sort of happening is, so he got in with this Robert Wagner guy and with this Barry Lane, and they started, you know, identifying these pedophiles and stuff, like I've said.
You have any idea where they meet or how they met?
They were just like, it just says they were in the same neighborhood, like same sort of streets or like block of streets. Yeah, so maybe it could have been a local pub, could have been like just, I'm not
sitting
sure how.
Sitting on their porch.
Could be just sitting at the porch there, could be drugs, I don't know. So the first murder here is a first victim was a young man, 22-year-old called Clinton Trezise, and he was bashed to death with a shovel in Bunting's living room after being invited in for a social visit.
That's a hard one. As a first kill, a shovel?
Beaten to death with a shovel.
Fuck.
Oh yeah. So Bunting accused Trezise of being a pedophile and referred to him in conversations after his murder as Happy Pants. So he didn't really like the guy, right? And this Clinton Trezise was found buried 2 years later in a shallow grave on the 16th of August 1994 at a sort of small, I don't want to call it town, almost like a little truck stop north of Adelaide called Lower Light. It was only 3 years, and then 3 years after this murder was the next time Bunting killed. So this was sort of his first. He just beat a guy to death with a shovel because he thought he was a pedophile. Then he waited a few years, right?
Any idea if it was planned out or just sort of happened, like wrong place?
It was planned. He thought he was a pedophile, invited him inside, grabbed the shovel. See you later.
Okay.
And, oh yes, and he disposed of the body with Wagner and Lane's assistance. That is quite important here. So,
okay.
At this point, he didn't know James Vlasakis, but the other two guys helped him like dispose of the body. They knew the murder happened, but they themselves weren't actually involved in the killing.
Jesus.
They just knew what happened and helped him like bury the body.
So first kill, immediately they already are helping out.
Oh yeah. So then the second victim was this Ray Davies, the intellectually disabled man that lived in the caravan of a neighbor called Suzanne Allen, who I think eventually was also a victim. Oh no, she wasn't a victim, but she was the mother of James Vlasakis. That's right. This Davies guy was a former lover of this Suzanne Allen, and he became a target for murder after Suzanne Allen, the mother, accused him of making sexual advances towards her grandchildren.
Okay.
So obviously Wagner thought that Bunting and Wagner thought that he was a pedophile.
He was just going around accusing people of pedophilia and just smacking them, like taking justice in his own hand.
And this is a disabled man, like, you know, he didn't have all his faculties.
A disabled man can be evil, you know.
True, but I mean, he's intellectually disabled. He's going to say some things potentially that, you know, he doesn't know the consequences of. Or it could be misconstrued in a way.
I guess, yeah.
So he was murdered by them in December of 1995. He was never reported missing. And Bunting and Wagner were later seen cleaning his caravan and then sold it 2 months later after repainting it.
Okay.
So after killing him, they moved it on, they sold it.
Probably with just a bucket of paint, like...
Yeah.
Imagine not being reported missing by anyone.
Oh, well, they were all in it together and no one else probably knew that he existed. He probably, you know, fell through the cracks, didn't have much family, so...
Yeah, but that's what I mean, that is sad.
Like, that's a big problem with the lesser dead, is that they often just... There's so many prostitutes killed every year, so many drug addicts, like, killed every year, where nobody just gives a shit. And they just, like you said it perfectly, they fall through the cracks.
Yeah. So, Bunting actually claimed Davies' welfare payments, like, you know, forget being disability payments. He continued to claim them.
Davies, how long did he claim them?
I'm pretty sure until they got caught.
Jesus.
I'm pretty sure.
Fuck.
So this was in 95, so basically for almost 3.5 more years. Davies' body was later recovered by police buried in the backyard of the former home of Bunting. And this was like the housing estate from the government. He had actually buried 2 bodies there. Davies was one of them. We'll get to the next one later on.
Okay,
so Davies was a second victim. The third one was a man called Michael Gardner, who was an openly gay man that was murdered by Bunting and Wagner in August of 97. Gardner shared a house with friends nearby, so I guess they probably must have just seen him around the neighborhood. An openly gay guy pissed him off.
Yeah.
Robert Wagner did not like Gardner due to his open homosexuality. So
because he didn't want to suck him off in a train station.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, there's a big chance because that's what you do. Like if somebody asks for a blowjob in a train station, another good at random advice tip: people open those ear holes. Like you suck that guy off. You do it.
It's Andy's top tip of the day. He's had about 3 of them
that's
already.
The second one. First one, you shoot the crippled guy in the legs.
Oh God. All right, let's get back to that's already horrific, so let's just keep going. So, Bunting had another guy, Frederick Brooks. I'm not really sure who that is, but he made him, or asked him to call friends of this Michael Gardner, the victim, and impersonate him.
Okay.
And demanded things like belongings of Gardner's, like a wallet and things like that, so that they could get his ID to gain access to his like personal funds, bank account, Social Security. His body was later one of the 8 bodies found in the 6 drums in the bank vault in the town of Snowtown. Then the next victim was Barry Lane. So this was the one that originally was helping identify, you know, the pedos and the whatever alleged. Yeah. You know, I don't think any of them actually were of the victims. It was just a crazy dudes doing crazy things.
Yeah. Okay.
So Lane was an open homosexual himself and a cross-dresser. And had previously been in a relationship with Robert Wagner from 85 to 1996. And this is what I don't get with these guys. Like, they hate homosexuals, but yet one of them, this Robert Wagner, who killed 10 people, was himself a homosexual.
in their close group, it's okay, but anything beyond that is just filth. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. But Bunting often referred to Lane as being like a dirty because he believed him to be a pedophile. Bunting forced Lane on the day of his murder to call his mother and said that he was moving to Queensland and never wanted to see her again or have anything to do with her.
Did he do that?
Yeah, he made him. Bunting made Barry Lane call his mother and just tell her like you're moving to Queensland, which is like 3,000 kilometers away, other side of the country.
Yeah.
You're never going to see her again. You don't want anything to do with her.
Fuck. Okay.
Bunting had also learned that Lane had been snitching about the murder of the first guy, Clinton Trezise, because Lane had helped conceal the body, like bury the body and all of that.
Who had he snitched to?
Sorry?
Who had he snitched to?
It says a guy here. I'm getting there, okay. I'm getting there. So Bunting signed over Lane's vehicle and claimed all of his welfare payments. Yeah, there's a thread here, you'll see, a trend.
Yeah.
So he stole his car basically, like even though the guy was dead, wrote it to his name and took control of it.
That's what I was wondering the second time you told me that, is that they try to get his info through wallet and acting like there's somebody else. Like if that's the common denominator is then getting that green, I guess.
It was for some, but during the court case, the police.
I mean, you researched the subject. Do you feel like that was the goal, or do you think that was just something, an added bonus?
Yeah, it was a bonus.
That.
It sort of came out in they had like a psych evaluation, during the trial, and they said like the money wasn't. They don't think it was any motivation at all. It was just like an added bonus after. It was literally they just thought they were like taking out the trash, like of human trash, basically.
Okay. Yeah.
So Lane's dismembered body was found in the same drum as the previous victim, Michael Gardner. They just shoved them in there, I guess.
Does it say how he got killed?
There is a bit more later on.
Okay.
We'll get to.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was. There's a bit more. They did some torture and things, and there's a bit more information. But I thought I'll just start with the murders, and we'll a bit more afterwards. So the fifth victim we're up to now. Yeah, fifth victim, Thomas Trevelyan. Was he's described as basically having like psychiatric problems. His family thought him as to be like a paranoid schizophrenic. Mm-hmm. So he knew he had actually helped Bunting kill this Barry Lane guy. But then he had started going a bit. Bunting said he was starting going a bit nuts because he had started talking to people and like, snitching.
He's a paranoid schizophrenic. Yeah. Of course, he's gonna fucking talk about it.
So Bunting took him out to a place called Kersbrook in the Adelaide Hills, which is on the other side of the city, sort of out in the country. He was taken by Bunting and Wagner. They forced him to stand on a box while they tied a noose around his neck and kicked the box out and hung him from a tree.
Fuck. Okay.
Yep. Initially, when Trevelyan's body was found on the 5th of November 1997, the police just thought it was a suicide. Paranoid schizophrenic, hung himself. They didn't really think much of it at the time. They just thought, it was a suicide. So that's why that didn't really get investigated so much.
Yeah. Okay.
Then on to the next one, a guy called Gavin Porter. He was a friend of Vlasakis's from Victoria, which is another state in Australia. He moved to live with Bunting and Vlasakis in a shared house, basically. They lived together. But he was a heroin addict. And Bunting killed him. Yeah, Bunting killed him after he was angered because he got pricked by a used syringe that Porter had left on the sofa.
That'll do it.
Yep. So Porter apparently was working on a car and then, in their driveway or whatever, and then took a little nap on the back seat. So Bunting just went and killed him while he was asleep.
How?
Doesn't say. It just says that they killed him. I think strangulation was a really common method.
But just a question, just in general about all the cases, like when it comes to Bunting and the other two guys, they were not drug addicts per se.
I don't believe so. No, there's nothing here that says. I think they were basically they had all their faculties, so to speak. Like they were against drug addicts. They just thought everyone was drug addicts, pedophiles, lame cripples, preying on children, whatever. That's what their mentality was. And then the next victim was a guy called Troy Eude, who was the half-brother of James Vlasakis. Vlasakis had earlier, like a couple years earlier, confided in Bunting that Troy had molested him when he was younger, like when they were growing up, when he was 13, I think he was.
Okay.
Bunting and Wagner convinced James Vlasakis to basically like beat him up, bash his stepbrother.
Okay, yeah.
Half brother. So they went and dragged him, the three of them, Bunting, Wagner, and Vlasakis, dragged Troy from his bed and murdered him, and then dismembered his body and stored it in a barrel, which they later, a year later, moved to the town of Snowtown, where he was eventually found.
Okay, yeah.
They like killed him, chopped him up. I'm pretty sure they beat the shit out of him, then choked him out and strangled him till he died. Then, we're almost near the end. 4 left, sorry. A guy called Frederick Brooks was another intellectually disabled man. He was the nephew of the wife of the guy that got done for helping dispose of bodies, but not murder. That was his name, Mark Haydon.
Yeah.
So he was murdered on the 17th of September, 1998. His body was moved to a car and stored in a car, which was then collected by Mark Haydon and then drove to the location where they put him in a barrel. And then chopped him up and put his body in a barrel. Then, another victim that was intellectually disabled, Gary O'Dwyer, 29-year-old man. He lived alone in their neighborhood where they were living at the time. So this one was more like just an opportunity for a bit of money. They did a bit of research on him, found out he didn't really have much family connections or anything. He was getting welfare from the government, so they were like, fuck this guy, no one's going to miss him.
Let's do him too.
Yeah, no one's going to miss him, let's do him as well. Yep, let's kill him.
Yeah.
But this is where it gets a bit fucked up. So his body was found by the police in the barrels in the bank vault, right?
Yeah.
But his body contained burn marks to his genitalia and testicles, which were inflicted by using a Variac machine to apply electric shocks. That's an auto transformer.
Oh, God.
So they, while he was alive, they hooked him up to, a huge electrical transformer and, gave him full-on burn marks to his genitalia. Yep, and tortured him.
Fuck.
I know about these murders, and I've heard about them. There's also a movie based on the murders, but I just I forgot how dark this fucking
we haven't got to the dark part yet. We haven't got to the bit where they explain more of their methods. I'm just sort of going quickly through.
So what's this movie called?
It's called Snowtown, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just called Snowtown, like SNOWTOWN. It's an Australian movie, came out 2011. It is grim, as you could imagine.
And do you feel it represents what happened?
I mean, I don't remember.
Because this day, I have yet to see a movie about Ted Bundy that truly satisfies me.
Yeah, well, the thing is, it was so long ago when we saw that movie, but it is quite, you get the eerie feeling.
Gruesome.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, it is a fucked up
movie. And especially,
movie,
it's like a lower budget movie, which usually,
Is it a Serbian film grade?
What?
Oh, wait, you guys haven't seen a Serbian film?
No. No, it's better than that. It's more just, obviously, it's not a Hollywood, I mean, it's a small Australian film, but it's really well done. I actually think it is eerie. It is quite disturbed. Not quite. It's very disturbing.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll check it out.
Ali?
I'll check it out. For the people at home too, just go and watch Snowtown.
Yeah, and I'm warning you, it's grim. It does a good job of encapsulating the mood of what these guys did.
All right, cool.
It's creepy. So the next victim was Elizabeth Hayden, who was the wife of Mark Hayden, the guy from before that, wasn't convicted of murder, but assisted.
Yeah, assisted, yeah.
The fucked up thing with this one, so she was found, I'm pretty sure she was buried in the backyard of, was she buried
Did she know something? Was she killed because she knew something?
I can't remember why. No, it doesn't. From my research, it didn't really say why she was murdered. It just said they killed her. I imagine maybe she started catching on.
Yeah, probably. I mean, and this is their first female kill, right?
Yep, first and only. Everyone else was male.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a sexually charged thing.
It would be sort of obvious that the reason why they went female on this one. Were there some sort of like, was there rape going on with this, or was this just a clean kill? Let's just be done with her.
I'm pretty sure it was just a let's just be done with her. There's not too much known because I think there was some. Oh no, sorry, wasn't it? Yeah, but I don't know. They didn't really know much from what I can gather. They just killed her. Like
okay.
So I assume she probably. The thing is, they were like no one really caught on until this was where the police started catching on to them. Was from this murder.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because she was killed on the 20th of November in 1998 when her husband Mark and a friend were away from the house. But the interesting thing here, and where the guy kind of screwed up, is he didn't report her missing, even though he's her husband, right? You would think, wouldn't you, like, even if you killed her yourself, you try to like cover up the tracks and say, "Oh, police, my wife went missing."
But if a master manipulator goes and tells you, well, she knows too much, she has to go, greater good, because I do believe in this instance they were thinking about the greater good in their own fucked up sense of the word. And she stood in the way of that greater good, then I think if he was a master manipulator, then he would have been able to persuade him to just not talk about it.
Yeah,
which
no, but it's more in the sense of the fact, like, even if you're a master manipulator, you've got away with 8 murders this far.
I think at this point it's 9.
Oh yeah, 9 or 10, whatever.
9 or 10,
a few murders, and by not reporting your wife missing, it will draw suspicion towards you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, it did, because what happened was her brother, Elizabeth Haydon's brother, at 3 p.m. the following day after she hadn't been seen, he was the one that reported it missing because he thought it was suspicious that the husband hadn't done it already. And then this is when the police started inquiring into her disappearance. And then what had actually happened is this Mark Hayden guy had rented the bank location in Snowtown under his name before he got married. He changed his name when they got married. So the police found out about this, and so they just went there to take a look, and then that's when they found the 6 barrels with 8 bodies stored in them. Jesus. Along with a whole bunch of other stuff that we're going to get to very shortly.
Okay.
So she was the second to last victim that they were convicted of. Is important to note here. There is one victim that the police are almost certain they killed, but they just can't prove it. So the final victim that they have been charged for and sentenced for is a man called David Johnson. He was the only one actually killed in the town of Snowtown. He was lured to the disused bank vault in the town by his stepbrother, James Vlasakis, on the 9th of May 1999. He wasn't homosexual, but Bunting would often refer to him as a faggot and that he needed to die. So whatever, guess he just didn't like him or whatever. Rubbed him the wrong way.
Well, yeah. I guess at this point that is a general consensus that if you get in the way,
pretty much, if I don't like you,
gotta go.
Yeah, see you later. So what happened? So James Vlasakis had told David Johnson earlier on about a computer for sale in a town called Clare in South Australia, which is sort of near the town of Snowtown. So he drove him out there and ended up taking him to Snowtown to look at this computer. Shortly after Johnson entered the building, he was grabbed from behind by Wagner around the throat and strangled. Wagner then applied handcuffs to him, and Johnson was forced by Bunting to read a script that Bunting had prepared earlier, as well as provide his bank PIN number, and he recorded some voice recordings for them on a laptop equipped with a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
So Wagner and James Vlasakis went off to a town of Port Wakefield, which is 20 minutes away from this town, to attempt to take money out of the guy's bank account to test that the PIN number was correct. This left Bunting and Hayden alone with Johnson in the bank vault. So Wagner and Vlasakis were unsuccessful in drawing the funds, I assume because the PIN number was wrong or there was no money. And then by the time they returned to Snowtown, Johnson was already dead. And Bunting and Wagner, this is where the most fucked up part. Bunting and Wagner had dismembered Johnson's body, then sliced off part of his flesh, fried it, and ate it. So they started eating the guy.
They're just having fun at this point.
And I'm pretty sure in the movie they depict this. I don't know how accurate it is, but they're literally just barbecuing up this guy.
Yeah,
just.
But
barbecuing up his flesh.
I guess that comes with the territory because See, murder is a weird little creature as far as like I've checked into a lot of fucking murders now that like in the last 10 years at least I've been way balls deep into anything conspiratory or like creepy or scary. The thing is, and this comes like it comes back again and again. It starts out with being nervous, but after a while, I think one of the famous lines that that was it Ted Bundy or I don't remember who it was, but he said, "Your first kill, you know where everything is, like you know to the T where you left everything, what the room looks like, what you're gonna do, and who you're gonna do it to." By the time that you're used to it, you forget where you put the lug wrench.
Yeah.
And I think that is like the absolute, like, that's exactly what's happening here.
Yeah.
Because they've gotten used to the killing. And now they're...
Yeah.
Isn't that Dahmer that said stuff. That?
Yeah, Dahmer. Yeah.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
No, wait. No.
Because Ted Bundy never really confessed his crimes. He only confessed it once.
I can't remember. I gotta look it up. Just keep talking, and I'll let you guys know who it was.
So they were all the victims that like ultimately, murder charges were pinned on the guys, and then there's one woman. Actually, another woman left who the jury couldn't couldn't find guilty due to a lack of evidence, and that was Suzanne Allen, who's the mother of James Vlasakis.
Jesus, this Lasakis guy. He likes killing his people.
Her remains.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna cut in here. It was Ted Bundy, and he said, "You learn what you need to kill and take care of the details. It's like changing a tire. The first time you're careful, by the 30th time you can't remember where you left the lug wrench." That's what he said.
Pretty much what these guys did by the sounds of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So the remains of Suzanne Allen were actually found. She was one of the 2 bodies buried in Bunting's backyard. She was wrapped in 11 different plastic bags, and her death was never disclosed because they kept collecting her pension, claiming a total of $17,000 from her pension, which is say $12,000 US or something.
That's a good holiday.
Yeah. They said she died of a heart attack, and they couldn't get murder charges to stick because basically they couldn't prove that she wasn't murdered because she probably got strangled, and obviously by the time they found the body and stuff, it had decayed enough that maybe they probably couldn't have worked out the exact cause.
Yeah.
So she was the only one that no one actually got done for murder for. So you're probably wondering at this point what charges did they actually get, right? Or like what punishment?
Yeah.
So Bunting, the leader of the gang, guilty of 11 murders and gets 11 life sentences concurrent with no parole.
Okay.
Wagner was guilty of 10 murders and has 10 life sentences, no parole.
Okay.
Vlasakis pled guilty to 4 murders, so he got sentenced to 4 life sentences with a 26-year parole period.
Okay.
So he'll be coming up shortly, but they'll never let these people out. Are
they all still alive?
Yeah, they're all still alive. And then Mark Haydon, the guy who didn't murder but got done for the helping dispose of bodies, he got 25 years and an 18-year non-parole. So he was actually eligible for parole, I think, about 3 years ago now. And the judge was just like, no, you're going to be in there until you finish your sentence, basically. But so this sort of summarizes their mentality. So when Wagner got sentenced and got his 10 life sentences, he said, and I quote, "Pedophiles were doing terrible things to children. The authorities didn't do anything about it. I decided to take action. I took that action. Thank you." So he just justified as, I was just killing pedos, even though 3 of these guys were just intellectually disabled people.
Mm-hmm.
People that had snitched.
That is just fucked. Like that shows that in his mind he already dehumanized these people.
Oh yeah. So,
I wonder if it actually was, because like in a lot of mental cases there is pedophilia and like look, I'm a numbers guy, right? I don't only look at the cases, I look at the numbers as well, and what comes out most is that people with let's just say lesser intelligence, because I don't want to use the word bleach babies anymore. Have you to thank for that, by the way, for that
Just
word
slip
in
of the
existence. No, listen, people with lesser intelligence are usually prone to stuff like this, like sexual deviancy and shit like that.
Yes.
So since they went for, I don't know if I don't know how bad a word of degenerates are, but since they went for these sorts of people, I wonder if there was actually any truth to their quest. It wouldn't, like, I'm not saying it justifies, for anybody listening, I'm not saying that it justified what they did. You know, they still killed human beings, whether they were pedophiles or not. It's not their right to take those lives. But I wonder if they were on a dot with these people and might actually have saved some kids from being fondled. I mean, like, again, I'm not saying blah, 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 you know.
Well, like, for example, say the Troy, the half-brother of James Vlasakis, who they murdered, like, when they dragged him out of his bed while he was asleep. Like, he did actually rape his half-brother when they were, like, teenagers. So I guess you can make an argument.
That one is vindicated in the sense it's like it's a vendetta thing. So that one, like, there's a reasoning behind the actual murder.
My point more is they probably justify that as, like, they maybe have saved future children as well. Like, if he did that when he was a kid, he might do it again.
Do you maybe think that that something like that happened in his childhood that triggered something along the lines of, oh, I've heard that guy is a pedophile, let's go kill him?
Yep. There is,
because that seems pretty plausible and like a human, somewhat logical way of thinking, I guess.
Yep.
If something were to happen in somebody's life and he is manipulative by nature, and then it's combined with the idea of, oh, there's other guys around, I need to protect people.
Yeah,
you know, that could probably spurt forward whatever happened.
Yep.
Still doesn't give you an excuse to murder people.
Of course not.
Still no. I agree completely.
But right, so well, I'm pretty sure in John Bunting's case, he was I'm pretty sure growing up he was abused, if I'm not mistaken. He also worked at an abattoir, like, you know, like a slaughterhouse, where he would often brag about how he loved, like, cutting up the bodies of animals and how he was the best at it and shit like that. So he had some issues, obviously. But okay. So to get back to it, so in total, they stole, or like from the Social Security and bank accounts, a total of $97,200, which is about $70,000 ish back in those money. So let's call it around $100,000 today, probably something like that. So when the police found the bank vault with the 6 barrels with bodies, they also found, and this is where I was saying before, where the police actually believe that the vault was a really clever idea for what they were doing. Because the police also found in this building, it was littered with tools, apparently. Tools like knives, a blood-stained saw, double-barrel shotgun, coils of rope, rolls of tape, rubber gloves, cloths, and a Variac metallurgy machine, so the one they used to, like, electrocute the guy's genitalia before, which is like a super high voltage, high amperage, like, electrical shock, basically. That's used for, I'm pretty sure, some type of welding, using, like, an electrical arc.
Okay, wow. That's a rough puppy right there.
Yeah. They crushed, I'm pretty sure it was the cross-dresser. The victim was Barry Lane when they actually killed him. Mm-hmm. The police had found or the pathologist or whatever they're called, the person investigating, like, the corpses, found evidence that he had been tortured. They'd grabbed pliers and were crushing his toes with pliers, like of his toes, while getting him to call them things like Lord, Sir, God, Master, Chief Inspector, and shit like that while they were torturing him. Jesus. They electrocuted another victim with similar electrical torture as before. Yeah, the guy that they hung. Like these were just
old
evil
school West.
people.
That one.
They're just genuinely fucked up guys. They were like using pliers. Like I think all the bodies, or almost all of them, had signs of torture. So what they were doing was they were basically setting up what the police suspect was in this vault. They were basically setting up to make like a torture dungeon and murder dungeon. And obviously being a vault, it's soundproof, it's secure.
What was the detail that led police to start an investigation towards them?
Also, they started investigating the disappearance of the wife that wasn't reported.
Okay. So, is it known what exactly it was that triggered an investigation? It was the brother?
Yeah, the brother rang and reported her missing at 3 p.m. the day after she was last seen. And the brother found it really weird that the husband, Mark Haydon, hadn't contacted police. So he kind of suspected something.
So they were actually looking into Mark Haydon, and Mark Haydon stayed with them until the end.
Yep, he sure did. And and the police ended up finding it because Mark Haydon had rented this bank location in a pseudonym, like his previous name before he got married. So when the police started looking into him and his wife's disappearance, they just thought, we'll go check out this. Yeah, it could be a lead, whatever. We'll go check it out. And then that's when they find these torture chamber, and then they open the barrels and there was 8 bodies crammed in.
Yeah.
One of them they had to cut off the foot to fit it in the barrel.
Oh god.
And shit like that. They had
But Mark is saying was he the first one to get arrested, and then he was
I think they were just kind of the police were more following him, tailing him.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the wife had died about 2 weeks before they eventually got caught. Oh, sorry, no. So a few months before. So they must have been investigating, but probably had no way to pin it on him, so they couldn't really charge him.
Mm-hmm.
So she was murdered in November 98, and then they were arrested on the 20th of May 99 after the police found all the bodies. And then the police had worked out that they had been moving these bodies in the barrels from different locations.
From one location to another. Yeah. Okay.
So they basically were. So they were setting up to make this bank into ultimately a little kill chamber for them to, they probably lure someone out there. It's a bank vault. It's secure. It's quiet.
Sick. I do think it's pretty fucking gnarly from them that at one point they just invited somebody towards there. They had different locations to kill at first, and then all of a sudden you can see that shift where they invite them to the murder chamber.
And it's the half brother, and you're only doing that because one of the guys just starts calling him a faggot and doesn't like him. It doesn't even make any sense. It's completely irrational. Here we go. So to give a bit more, so one of the victims, Frederick Brooks, he also received electric shocks to his penis and testicles, and had burning. He had a burning sparkler. Those little sparkler things for New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
He had one of them pushed down into his penis after his toes were crushed and his nose and ears burned with cigarettes. He was allowed to choke to death on his gag.
Sounded him with one of those magnesium rods?
Yes, they sounded him. They lit the sparkler and shoved it in his dick hole.
But that keeps burning.
Yeah, and they burned him with cigarettes on his nose and ears, and then they left him to choke to death on his gag. Yeah, these guys were just... They beat Ray Davies, one of the disabled guys. They ultimately, I think they strangled him to death with a piece of rope, but they'd beaten him with a tire lever in a bath, attacked him with clubs, and repeatedly beaten his genitals and crushed his toes with pliers as well. So these guys were just animals, savages.
Yeah. At this point,
they were just absolute savages. So one last small bit. It's been going on for a while. It's quite depressing, but just to sort of tie the end. So the examiners, when they actually found the remains, they had actually been mummified instead of dissolved, because of the type of acid that they chose to use in the barrels.
Okay.
So there's some quote sort of from the police of it was the most horrific sight and smell you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, wrong acid can really...
Yeah, I think they used hydrochloric instead of hydrofluoric acid.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So during the trial, 3 jury members had to quit because they just couldn't handle the evidence. Like
they couldn't take it
couldn't
anymore.
take
What has been said.
Couldn't take any more. There was 250 suppression orders when the trials were going on. So like that's why a lot of this information's a bit like spotty, because they really tried to like lock down leaking information.
Do you have any idea of what evidence they played in court? Like, were there tapes? Were there
they'd found
pictures,
tapes, and I think as well that Bunting and Wagner basically admitted to most of them as well, and then went in great detail on how they did it, because they were proud, like, we just were killing pedophiles and this and that, and we were doing
from their
service.
perspective,
So they basically admitted to most of it, and their trial went on for around 12 months. They had a lot of suppression orders, and it wasn't until the film came out in 2011 when they all got lifted, because the film, obviously, to make the film, they had to be able to access information. And the final murder charges against Bunting and Wagner for the murder of Suzanne Allen were dropped on the 7th of May 2007 because they didn't have enough evidence, basically. But I'm pretty sure most people, you put 2 and 2 together, they probably did it.
Yeah.
But you can't really do it even on a hunch. So they're pretty much Australia's worst serial killers, and their reasoning was because they just thought they were doing a service.
Fuck. Okay, well that's just fucking horrible.
Yep. So if you want to be super depressed, watch the film Snowtown, which released in 2001.
No, actually, I think it's
2011.
I think it would I think you gave a very a nice summary of what actually went down, but I think there's definitely a lot more to this story for people to find out, like how it actually happened, what the rooms, because I'd imagine be that every murder case you can find pictures of what the rooms look like and shit like that, and like what that bank would look like. Because one thing that I always do when I watch true crime and all that shit is actually like imagining walking in there. Like, I brought up the town of Truth and Consequences, which was the home of the Toy Box Killer. For people that don't know the Toy Box Killer, if you thought this was bad, then do not look up the Toy Box Killer. You will it's fucking horrible. Dogs are involved in this story, so
jeez,
and forced, not willing.
Oh, of course,
So there's a lot more horrible things out there that you could probably find, and I'd suggest if you are into true crime, then delve deeper in this story, because it does sound a very interesting. A very interesting story, to say the least. I have
one last clarification on something you quickly asked.
Okay.
There is a little bit here that I just missed, was also on how the police eventually also found what led them to the bank was that, because it was such a small town, strangers, town folk were finding it weird that these new strangers to town were like unloading stuff into the old bank.
Into the bank.
So then obviously the police were already looking into him, and then someone sort of must have said something to the local police guy, and then he looked him up in the system. It probably flagged something, and then that's when the police went there.
Yeah.
And so potentially like that, if no one had said something, they could have kept going for who knows how long.
Oh yeah, But I guess that in small towns, like police are much closer to the people that they actually, they do their job, and at the end of the night they're sitting to drink a cup of coffee with Aunt Jackie. And Aunt Jackie tells you everything you need to know about the town that day. So I guess like small towns is good for picking up people, but don't store your corpses in small town people. Like, do that in big cities, like normal people.
Yeah, exactly. Come on. So that's
third piece of at random advice of today.
The third piece. Yeah, that's sort of the Snowtown Murders. There's there's a film if you want to look into it more. That goes a lot more as well in the relationships between. Because of the length of this, I didn't really want to talk too much about
I bet that the relationship between these fuckers was just like it was mental.
It is mental. The movie is almost worth watching just to like understand the interactions that these people had, because it's fucked up, and it's quite a big network of people that were like, it wasn't just one or two guys. It was like like a couple of the victims had actually assisted in murders themselves, and then were also then killed. So it's like,
and then were killed.
Potentially 6 or 8 people here involved. Like it was crazy. So yeah, that's the Snowtown Murders.
Jesus Christ. All right, I would do a Goodest Boy segment this week, but I had something planned.
I want to do a Goodest Boy segment of the week.
You want? Oh, that's fucking fantastic, because I don't think mine fits in here. I've been way too rude today to say something nice that I was about to say.
She said about 5 words this whole time, so it's probably good that she says something now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, people. Like this, these are testing times, and it's getting to me. So sorry for not talking too much. Like this episode just really got to me.
It's all good.
Well, the Goodest Boy this week goes to Little Morris. One of our listeners, our colleague at work, she had her lovely little cat that recently passed away. So it's sad, but still, we love our pets, and so I want to give him a little shout out. Little Morris, your naked little peachy furry thing. We will miss you.
Naked or is he furry?
Well, these naked cats are like peachy. They don't have fur, but they're like
that's
soft.
True. Yeah, they have like little like hairs, like you sort of have like on your face that people can't see and shit. Yeah, that's true.
So
like a ball sack after 2 days.
But anyway, so this Goodest Boy of the week goes to Little Morris.
Little
we'll
Morris.
Miss you.
Oh. Okay.
Poor old Morris.
Could we maybe get a picture of Morris and throw him on the Instagram
page? Absolutely.
Okay, that's cool. All right. Well, if you want to see that picture, then go to the @random.podcast on Instagram. That's at.random.podcast. And find our stuff there. We post just some random shit once in a while.
I mean, it's the whole point, right?
And actually, the Twitter page is doing pretty well.
Yeah. I mean, and follow us at @AT_randompod. Follow us on there. We do stuff on there quite often, so we're pretty active on there.
Yeah, we were Zimbabwe's #1 trending podcast.
We absolutely categorically are. Asterisk.
Oh, actually, I want to give us a small pat on the back.
Okay.
Got our first 100 downloads.
Oh, we did. That's true.
Yeah.
Which actually went a bit quicker than I probably thought it would, so that's good.
Yeah. This is a good 100 downloads episode, I guess.
Yeah. Let's chop it up and put it in a barrel. On to the next 100.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Guide us out of here, Alex.
So my top tip for today is this. If you don't like someone, don't kill them. Just leave them alone. Don't chop them up, put them in a barrel, and leave them there for 4 years. And that's my top tip.
Maybe
don't murder. Don't kill people. Let Corona do the killing.
Maybe just a little bit.
Look, okay.
Listen, he's in a wheelchair anyway. He doesn't go in anywhere.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, bye.
Sorry. All right.
Yeah, don't murder.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.